For DLC 3, there have been a number of changes coming to Argenta, which are direct and some indirect nerfs, which actually help a lot of people around her, though she is still going to be exceptionally overpowered. Her scaling in the earlier parts of the game is a little bit lower, but by the end of the game, you won't be doing 200k bursts like you were doing previously, but you're still going to one-turn every boss, even on unfair, so there's not much to worry about that. The main question everyone will ask is, which path do I set Argenta on? Now, this is going to be some story spoilers, so if you don't want to know, do just skip ahead by about 2 minutes or so. Basically, Argenta has two paths, the Fire path and the Fury path. The Fire path will give her access to a version of Power Armor, which is the 1-star Power Armor, which is after using a Heroic Act, the wearer immediately uses War Hymn or Furious Recital regardless of its cooldown. This will allow you to double stack Litany of Hatred, and it will allow you to have a lot more Zeal stacks, which will be very beneficial to her Tenets of Retribution. The other version is it's a different 1-star Power Armor, but we'll switch over and show the different look here. The way this one works is whenever the wearer scores a critical hit or kills an enemy, the wearer's damage dealt is increased by 5%. Now, this used to get reset if you missed an attack, but that part is gone now. However, this is still exceptionally powerful, so no matter which version you get, both are very good. The Repentia path is obviously really horrible because she gets benefits from not wearing armor and she gets some resolve stuff, but it's nowhere near as good as her power armors. The one that I do recommend, like I said, is to go down her Fire path. Now, how you determine which is her Fire and her Fury path, well, that's not going to be for me. Fury is just destroy everything, Fire is passion, so just make sure that you're picking your story quest based on that. The other nerf that she's had is she now can't use other power armors, so you cannot use something like the Adherent of Mankind, and you can't even use the other ones. So, and she already was locked out of the modifier Artificer's Power Armor, which would have been the best one for her given her 1 AP burst. So direct nerfs there. The other thing is, Degrade Defense has been massively nerfed by 90%. This means that she will not zoom ahead of Ulfar in terms of damage. So whilst she is still the best person to use the improved Heavy Bolter, and even using Blessed Bolter casing, now that Eogun can buff single target shots, her single attacks, especially with Overpower from a Heavy Gunner, is actually exceptionally powerful. In a lot of cases, she'll actually do more damage thanks to her Tenets of Retribution and her Litany of Hatred than even a Sniper would. But it's going to be one of those things where, yes, she is going to be your heavy gunner. Ulfar will try to compete with his Astartes weapons and his Typhoon Bolter, and something that is going to be exceptionally useful, especially in the DLC, is the Judex. Now, we do have a upgrade to the Multi-Melter now, but it's nowhere near as good as Judex. What Judex does is, if a target hit by the flames attack suffering from burning at the end of its turn, that target explodes, inflicting burn of the same level on all enemies within a 3-cell radius around it. Target must pass a willpower resistant test with a -15 penalty or fall unconscious for 1 round. Yeah, that's exceptionally powerful, though you will tend to kill everything, so it won't matter too much. But yes, in terms of melters, previously in Act 2 you had access to the Multi-Melter, which with her Heavy Gunner talents is 1 AP. Unfortunately, there have been no melter buffs, so the average melter guns still cost 2 AP and are not very worth using, but they did add just a damage upgrade. It doesn't have a unique effect, and you can get Eruption, but that is right before the final boss. So yes, the Multi-Melters now have a Act 2, Act 4 and Act 5 variant, but it is not worth using in my opinion, because her main damage is going to be the Heavy Bolter. Area weapons are strictly support weapons because they're designed to kill low level chaff stuff, and the Judex is going to be able to do 1 AP big AP burst, which will allow you to do a 1 AP burst fire with your improved Heavy Bolter, and obviously you want to be getting kills with improved Heavy Bolter to increase the rate of fire. Just with the compensator gloves and the tactical backpack, you're already starting combat with 10 rate of fire. Her rapid fire will add another 6 to that, and then obviously every kill, and as you build stacks of versatility, you'll also increase your rate of fire. So switching between a Heavy Bolter attack and a Judex attack will be very useful. Even if you use Firearm Mastery to do single shots with the improved Heavy Bolter and then Flamer attacks and just save it all up for right at the end to do a Wildfire attack with your burst, you'll do an exceptionally overpowered burst and you will do a lot of damage. And her unique helm, the Corruption Eradicate helmet that you pick up in Act 3, Yes, this will drastically increase all of her damage. Now, on the spreadsheet that I've currently got for members and will go live once I finish completing it next week, I actually got an act-by-act guide on what items to give her and what to consider. Now, these are still not meant to be one-for-one. I always say that. Though, again, Chains of Domination, again, the Tactical Backpack, again, the Caligao St. Keith on Argenta, as well as the other items I covered, and even the Enemy Finder, which will cause your shots and your burst to auto-crit. Yeah, these are all ones that I highly recommend, but if you did want to change them, then do feel free, but obviously results may vary. So with that in mind, let's quickly explain her Zeal. So with the 1.5 update, Priest, and obviously a Sister of Battle, now has the passive Unshakable Faith. In combat, the Priest gains at stacks of willpower equal to 2 times strength, toughness bonus, agility bonus, and perception bonus. So having these up at the start of combat, especially with, say, the Adherent of Mankind, which she now can no longer use, was a good way to get Zeal. At the start of combat, they get your willpower bonus, stacks of Zeal. So with this, she'll have an extra 33, so she'll be seeing about 70, so she'll start with 7 points of Zeal. They gain 1 stack of Zeal for each enemy they attack with a bolter, flamer, or chain, melter, or power weapon for the first time in combat. They gain 2 stacks of Zeal for each Daemon or Xenos killed in combat by any source. So you can understand why in Act 4 and Act 5 you build up a lot of stacks of Zeal. In the DLC you will also build up a lot of stacks of Zeal, so Argenta is going to be one of your biggest heavy hitters. And why, do you ask? Well, that's because of the way Zeal works. One of the talents, Litany of Hatred, when the priest uses War Hymn or Furious Recital for 1 round, the priest and themselves and their allies in a 5-star radius do 5 times number of steel stacks percentage more weapon damage. This has been nerfed from base damage, but you're still going to be seeing about 400% damage increases just from having Litany of Hatred. And the other one that you're going to see is Tenets of Retribution. Mindstorm Priest deals willpower bonus divided by 3 more damage and 4% more critical damage with bolt weapons. Base melter flamer is increased by 4%, and again this is going to be from your willpower. Now as you buff her and you give her stuff like officer buffs, as you give her navigator buffs, as you give her psyker buffs, this will increase Tenets of Retribution a lot, though it won't increase your starting Zeal. But having those boosts will make this incredibly powerful. As you can guess, you can probably get up to a 100 extra base damage if you can get her up to 300 willpower, which is quite easy to do if you're stacking buffs enough and you're stacking psi rating, though it is now a lot harder. The devs have been working incredibly hard to limit the amount that you can do there, but it will still be exceptionally powerful. This is why you also want to go into heavy guns. The other reason why you also want to go into heavy guns is because of heavy gunner talents are exceptionally powerful. The main reason why they are so powerful is going to be stuff like your breaking point. Heavy weapons deal 1 and 10% damage and ignore 2 deflection, which is okay, but the main culprit is going to be overpower. When firing heavy weapons, critical chance is increased by your ballistic skill bonus, and critical damage is increased by 3 times ballistic skill bonus. Now, these bonuses, like I said, will even apply to her single shots as well as her burst fires, and this is why they're going to be doing so much. When you have Litany of Hatred up, Tenets of Retribution, all your buffs, your single shots will out-damage sniper rifles. And because you can make your rate of fire number of attacks, if you've already got your rate of fire up to 20, you can take 20 free attacks. And with the Blessed Bolter casing, they are auto-hit. So even if you only have a 1% chance to hit, that's an auto hit, baby, and you can just clear the map that way. So this is why Soldier is so good. Now, like I said, Degrade Defense has been nerfed. Instead of stacking up to 1,000, it now only stacks up to 100. So that's 100 divided by 6% extra damage that you can potentially gain, which isn't that bad, but overall, strongest build for her is still going to be Arch-Militant. Yes, I am aware that if you stack every buff in the game with every buffer in the game, Master Tactician can make 1 impressive attack a turn, whereas Arch-Militant just always 1 turns every encounter, which is why it's going to be the most beneficial, and it's going to be the one that increases rate of fire the most efficiently because of building stacks of versatility. So that's why this build is going to be focused on the Arch-Militant version. So with all that said, all that covered, that's all the information. Now we're going to start explaining why we picked these talents, so let's get into it. Argenta's build is mostly going to be similar to that of what it was in 1.5, though I have made a few small changes that I will go over and sort of talk about them. So the main feature of Soldier is Run and Gun. This is essentially going to give you extra attack economy and extra MP, so it's very useful to enable you to do your damage. Revel in Slaughter, when you get enough kills, you get a nice little buff that also removes the debuff to be able to use Run and Gun again. Firearm Mastery can have some really good upgrades that can increase stuff like your rate of fire, or it can enable movement, or in my case, for extra armor pen. Now, this will also give you your weapon's current rate of fire additional attacks for single shot based weapons, though if you're using burst only weapons or area only weapons, you will use those attacks instead. So a burst only rifle that has a rate of fire of 6 will actually be able to make 6 free burst fires, but you will obviously still need to reload between there, so those costs will be there. Now, what I have changed specifically for the prologue is to take point blank. All of the soldiers' area attacks gain 29 arm penetration ignore for deflection. Now, this is scaling, so this will scale from your ballistic skill bonus, and it will scale from your ballistic skill bonus, and both actually. This seems bugged as well. It seems to be the whole area attack, not just 3 cells. I was testing this from 4 cells away from enemies, and I was still getting this buff, so I found point blank to actually be more useful. The Chaos Spawn's actually been buffed, so you can't knock him back to get as much damage, or at least on Unfair I couldn't knock back specifically the Chaos Spawn boss, though later Chaos Spawn enemies I was able to freely knock around with the shotgun, so I'm not too sure of why that was. As for going into the next levels, we start off with Ballistic Skill. Ballistic Skill is going to be the most important thing. Agility second, because not only is it dodge and initiative, but it will enable some of your abilities. Perception last, because Perception is to lower enemy dodge at range, whereas ranged characters can't use agility to lower dodge like melee characters who get half the bonus of their agility to lower dodge, whereas you get your full perception bonus. I also take Rapid Reload. This is going to be very useful to some of the early solid projection rifles. The most important piece of advice I can give to you is to get rid of Unfading Valor, which is Argenta's starting bolter, immediately. You can find really good weapons in Act 1 like the Ripper, which you can use until you get the modified bolter, or if you just want to use the regular bolt rifle, you can do that as well. Though Unfading Valor can still be very useful in the Chaos Spawn, because of the size of it, chances are every shot's going to hit, so you will do a lot of damage, so you don't always need to swap over to a las rifle, though I do recommend las rifles or even the Ripper until you get the modified bolter. But if you just want to swap to the regular bolter, which you can find 2 of in Act 1 on Rycad, then you feel free to immediately get onto those bolt rifles. Rank 6, we take some more ballistic skill, and we also get Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire will give you your next range burst at the base rate of fire additional, so this is very useful. It does deal 25% less damage, but we do get upgrades fix that. Rank 7, we get Agility and then Litany of Hatred. This is going to be an AoE damage buff for the party, so Litany of Hatred is incredibly useful. Rank 8, Unfaltering Fire removes the penalties from Rapid Fire, so now it's just straight damage, so this is why soldiers are incredibly powerful. Now, I have Argenta covering demolitions and awareness because they tie into her core skills. You can try to do Lore Imperium, but you have to remember this scales from intelligence, and Argenta never actually gets intelligence increases on the build other than the passive ones that you might see. This is so you can use items like St. Cognatius's scriptures, which will give you extra damage, though it will not really make you effective at covering Lore Imperium on Unfair, so do keep that in mind, and do keep in mind what squads you are using for your coverage. As for her first upgrade, I take Firearm Mastery Upgrade 2. Until the end of combat, the soldier's rate of fire is increased by 30%. Yep, exceptionally powerful full burst builds. Then I get Fired Up. Whenever the soldier deals damage, their critical damage is increased by 1% till the end of combat. A lot of people overvalue Fired Up, but for a burst build, it is exceptionally powerful and I do recommend it. Agility, and then we get Concentrated Fire. Concentrated Fire is absolutely fantastic because the next range area attack made by the soldier not only deals a lot more damage, but also has extra dodge reduction. The area attacks always deal half damage if they miss, but enemies can still try to get out of that, and being able to just guarantee the damage so they don't just dodge everything is very useful, especially in the Void Shadows DLC where you fight a demon where you don't quite have the dodge reduction to take it down very efficiently on Unfair. But yes, this will scale from ballistic skill on both of them. We then take more awareness. Now this point of strength is very important because you need it for heavy guns, so make sure you do it, because someone on one of my previous videos commented that they couldn't equip heavy guns. They didn't understand why. They forgot to take this 1 point in strength. Argenta will need that with heavy gun and proficiency to be able to use heavy bolters. Tenets of Retribution, yep, this is going to be the one that increases your bolt damage. It will also help increase some of your flame stuff, so do get this, very important. Rank 13, I take Swift Slaughter, so Revenant Slaughter can be used after 2 kills instead of 3. If you really want, you could take Demolition Engineer here, which will scale your bonus damage to area weapons from your agility and your demolition skill, though I don't think it's as valuable as getting this, but that is up to you to change. But Weapon Expert, convert, so your bolt weapons get extra arm penetration. Very good, because it's just straight damage increase. Rank 14, I take heavy armor, heavy weapon proficiency, though I don't recommend changing to heavy weapons until you are in Act 2 and you have the heavy gunner talent. Keep that in mind, and you'll go straight from using stuff like the Imperial Pride or the Ritobi Pattern Bolter and going straight into the heavy bolter, and the heavy bolter will carry you all the way to Act 4. It is an exceptionally powerful weapon. More awareness, and then the last rank 3 upgrade I get for Firearm Mastery is that the soldier's attacks are 20% harder to dodge, and until the end of combat the soldier's range attacks gain 10% arm penetration. So straight damage increase, straight, well, dodge reduction. So very, very useful things to have, and that will sort of carry you through the Act 1. To avoid spoilers for the DLC and for people making incredibly new runs, I won't be showing gameplay footage of this in action, but if you do want to look at my previous soldier guide that I did last week, then that will actually show you an Act 1 encounter and sort of explain some of the rotations. When it comes to gear, it is very hard to make one-for-one suggestions, because depending on the party, depending on the playstyle, what gear and where you allocate that gear will greatly change on each run. There are some instances of gear that I would say that, yes, as soon as you get it, you want to give the light flak armor in Act 1 to Argenta because it boosts her agility, but the problem is you might have a different character that needs that agility breakpoint. The same as you only get access to copies of Sin Skin, so I use that often because it's got fairly good armor and it will help dodge, but other characters might use it. For a lot of Act 2, I actually use Argenta with the Enforcers like Carapace because it gives you a straight agility bonus. However, both Heinrichs and Kibella will also want this gear, and depending on the role of your rogue trader, they will also want it themselves. So that's why I try to keep it a little bit more general. Something like the Book of Minor War Prayers will help boost Argenta's damage, and obviously everything that I went over here for more of the endgame. Like I said, I'm going to have Act by Act suggestions for every character build in the spreadsheet that will be published as soon as it's finished, and is currently available for members on the Discord, but there's not going to be too much that I can really go for it. You will basically vibes based pick what gear you have on her. Until you get the heavy gunner skill, you're going to be mostly using regular bolters. Bolt pistols are terrible. We didn't get any new ones in DLC. They have low ammo capacity, so they're not very good for a soldier. Their base damage is also quite low, so they're just weaker than the other pistols that you have access to. But Argenta shouldn't need to use a pistol because Flamer's got a stealth buff where you can now use them in melee. Also, shotguns are insanely powerful. I actually use shotguns until I get my first heavy flamer because they have knockback and CC, so they're incredibly valuable. So that's something to keep in mind, that you'll probably be using a bolter with a shotgun early on, and then you'll slowly start upgrading. There are some very good ones. If you go into the quarantine zone, which you can do at the start of Act 2, you can get the Imperial Pride, and if you manage your resources quickly, you can get access to Precise Bolter. Now, there are a lot of other very good bolt rifles, like the Hymn of Vehemence, which has finally been fixed to increase its rate of fire based on your stacks of Zeal, which is actually really powerful. However, she will never use this because everything is going to be better. Like, some people talk about They Shall Weep or even her Storm Bolter, but they do not compare to the improved Heavy Bolter, and people are coping who even pretend that it does. So the reason we pick Arch-Militant over Bounty Hunter or even Master Tactician is because of versatility. Versatility, every time you increase a stack of it, you get 3 weapon skill and ballistic skill. When you've hit 4, you get 10 plus your ballistic or weapon skill bonus, whichever is highest, as additional damage. Now, it's not just about that, because hitting that 4 is pretty much all you need, because to get exceptional increases there, you would be having to hit like 200 and 300 mark to even be seeing 30% increases. The reason versatility is so good is because that bonus will also increase your rate of fire when it comes to items like the Compensator Gloves, and it will also work with the Temperis Elite Carapace Backpack to increase rate of fire on anything with a base 4 or lower rate of fire. So whilst Argenta's improved Heavy Bolter starts at a 6, you'll be using the Compensator Gloves and the Tactical Backpack. So increasing those stacks of versatility will actually increase her rate of fire, which is exceptionally noticeable, especially with the Act 4 upgrade from the Heavy Bolter to the improved Heavy Bolter, which will also increase your rate of fire on kill. The other talent that makes this so good is going to be All Out. What All Out does is your attacks do not cost MP, which means you can attack in a move, and this is exceptionally important, and it's why Bounty Hunter often struggles. It's why Vanguard doesn't even compare, and any argument to be made otherwise doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you're going to be doing a lot more of the versatility. When you take talents like Dependable as well, you can also stack armor higher than what a Vanguard can. So any argument on what would make a different archetype more reliable, be it Master Tactician or Bounty Hunter for ranged, or be it something like Assassin or Vanguard for melee, Arch-Militant's always going to do it better. The only time where that changes a little bit is the damage potential of Executioner, because Executioner actually has infinite stacking damage, but with the change that Toxin no longer works on mechanical enemies, as well as Bleed doesn't work on mechanical enemies, and Burning being harder to apply unless you're going down the dogmatic route, yeah, Arch-Militant's always going to be more reliable. We're back to 1.0 meta, baby, where it's all about Arch-Militant. So let's talk about what we're doing with some of the builds here. If you want to look up any of what these specifically do look at my 1.5 spreadsheet. It does list exactly what every talent and ability does, and do look at the wiki made by Adam, which if you come onto the Discord, anyone can tell you and link you at that at a moment's notice for what these all specifically do. But I'm going to talk about why I picked them. Reckless Rush is important to get as your first ability because it gives you more MP, and once you have versatility when you click it, increases your versatility, so you can hit that vital 4 breakpoint. Always Ready starts you off with 2, so when you use Reckless Rush at the start node, you gain MP, you'll have 5 stacks versatility. When you attack, you'll have 6. When you have 6, the upgrade to Wildfire will make it so that you can have an additional attack for 1 AP. Steady Superiority is the heroic, which can give you additional attacks, but you won't use this as much because Firearm Mastery is going to be a lot better, but on subsequent turns you may end up using it. We increase Ballistic Skill first because that's very important for Argenta, then we get Heavy Gunner. This is so we can move over to the Heavy Bolter. At this point you could swap immediately from the Precise Bolter to the Heavy Bolter, but you might want to hold off just a little bit, but because of the recoil differences. But if you've already got the recoil item from Janus, then you can make that transition immediately. Next, we get Wildfire. The reason we delay it is because we want Always Ready as soon as possible, and we always want Reckless Rush first. So before we can get Flash Fire is going to be a little bit later because All Out will also be more important. Breaking Point is going to start increasing our damage and ignoring deflection for our heavy weapons. We can continue increasing demolitions because for my build for Argenta, I'm focusing on demolitions and awareness. For your other build, you might be focusing on something different. The 1.5 spreadsheet has a companion guide for which skills they can cover, but then I start going into agility, and then congratulations, we're online. Heavy guns will now drastically out damage anything any other guns can do. What this does is it gives us additional critical damage and crit chance based on our ballistic skills, so it's just absolutely fantastic, and it ties in with the Arch-Militant and why we want to be an Arch-Militant heavy gunner, because not only is it more AP efficient, it just does more crit chance, more damage. Flash Fire is the upgrade, so the cost of Wildfire is reduced by 1 AP for every 3 stacks versatility, so this means if at the start of the game you use Reckless Rush and then you do a 1 AP Flamer attack, that means you now have a 1 AP Wildfire to then Burst Fire, which would usually be 2 AP, so you're making 2 attacks for 2 AP, and then you can use the other 2 AP to upgrade both their damages for 4 AP. That slot of Reckless Rush is 5 AP. Congratulations, we've now efficiently used all of our AP. For other abilities we gain later, we'll need buffs from companions to be able to use them more efficiently, but that's going to be pretty much your whole turn done, and that means by level ranked 10 of Arch-Militant, everything is fully online. So this means by level 25, your build's done. It's done. This is your build. You're going to destroy the whole game with just this. Everything else beyond level 25 is just additional icing on the cake. You will be one-turning by this point in the game. There's no reason you shouldn't be with correct officer support. And if you're using a grand strategist in your team, easy wins, baby. Rank 11, we start increasing demolition and agility. Agility is still going to be important for initiative and some of your soldier abilities, though perception is going to be something that starts becoming more important, and we will start to build that up more as we get into some of the later levels here. Steady Superiority upgrade 4. Yep, this is so we can use both of the ones. This will also apply to Blade Dancer. It says for Soldier and Warrior, but this also does work for Blade Dancer, but we'll be able to use both our heroics once per turn. Awareness, adaptability will start increasing our critical hit chance as we swap attack type, so it's very good. So gaining a stack of versatility increases the hit chance by 5% till the end of the turn, and it stacks, so you do want to be swapping between your flamers and your bursts. I get Flame Weapon Expert for -1 AP cost, so this is so you can do the really big AoE for 1. Now alternatively, this is where you could take Melter Weapon Expert at rank 14. The only problem is that the Heavy Melter in Act 2 isn't exactly the best. The upgrade in Act 4 isn't exactly the best. The upgrade in Act 5, you only have it for the final boss. So because there are no named versions with additional effects for melters, and the fact that melters don't have as much of an impact as shotguns or flamers, I still think melters aren't as good. They added items to give them more support in Act 4, but by then you're already one-turning the game without area weapons, so it becomes a little bit redundant. But if you want to really go for melters, this is where you pick it, and this is also where we start increasing our perception. At rank 15, we take Devastating Attack and Breaking Attack. Devastating Attack is going to be incredibly important for Act 3. If you take Argenta into Act 3 and you give her the Heavy Stubber, the Devastating Attack will do impact damage, which will knock enemies prone. You will need this to survive either the Commissar and Malice fight, and because I've always built into this, it's why I've always considered these two fights to be insanely easy, and the reason I've never understood why other people struggle is they didn't build like I did. So Devastating Attack does cost 1 AP, so you will be needing to use either Air of Authority or an Overseer, or just something that will increase your access to this, or when you're doing a Finest Hour turn, if you've got the Officer upgrade that makes it cost 0 AP, then you'll be able to use this. For piercing rending damage, you inflict bleeding and slowed, and energy and all other damage inflicts blinded until the end of combat. Breaking Attack will cause it to minus enemies' toughness and armor, which will enable some of your other talents later in Arch-Militant. We get more perception, more awareness, then we take critical versatility, so the Arch-Militant gains 5+ number of versatility stacks bonus to critical damage. This bonus is kept when the Arch-Militant uses cautious or confident approach. This is quite useful because with Fired Up and critical versatility, this means Vital Points becomes a very good talent because it can clone your critical damage stuff, so it is stuff to consider. We get more perception. Listening of Purification, I take right before Act 3. This was really overpowered because it could one-shot a lot of the Drukhari's, but now that they've limited how much Zeal you gain, it's a lot less, but still pretty good. And then we take Steady Superiority Upgrade 2. In terms of gear, most of your gear is going to be similar to Act 1. By now you might have the Enforcer Light Carapace that I discussed earlier. You could be using either the Cape of the Righteous Fury or the Tactical Backpack, but you're mostly going to be seeing a lot of the items that I already shown as already on Argenta. So the things to consider here is going to be obviously getting the Gunslinger's Helm, which is something you can do in Act 2, which will give you additional damage based on your rate of fire, and in Act 3 the Corruption Eradicator Helmet will be what takes over. The Fiery Retribution from DLC 2 is a good heavy flamer that you can use at this point, but we're about to go and talk about Exemplar levels, and yeah, even before Exemplar, this build is already one-turning. So as you finish up Act 2 and hit Exemplar levels going into Act 3, you're going to start seeing some really powerful items. Mostly you're going to be wanting to use recoil gear on Argenta. There is a piece of recoil gear that you'll find on Janus, and another piece that you will find on a body in Act 3 as you're leaving Act 3. So this is going to be the recoil war gloves and the recoil boots. These will pretty much carry you until you get to Act 4 where you get the compensator gloves. Previous videos I have gone into great detail about these items, and I've already linked where you can find them below in the comments in the spreadsheet, so do just have a look at that, and I will be noting when your upgrades change as you go through things. Before we get into Exemplar levels, we need to talk about augmentation. Currently, you can augment Argenta. I do not know if this is intentional, and some lore heads will have to tell me if this is okay because they might be changing it, except points they implied that you couldn't do it. So for Argenta, the one item I do have on her is the Hand of the Righteousness. This is something that you have access to in Act 2, which does something hilarious and is probably not intended to be as broken as it is on her, which is this creature characteristics are reduced by the user's dogmatic number times penance brand stacks. So Argenta is a rank 3 dogmatic, so for each hit, all of their stats will get a -3. You do a 20 round burst fire, that will reduce all of their stats by 3 times 20. So as you can imagine, Argenta becomes an insane debuffing tool that will actually be lowering enemies' health just through stats alone before she even starts doing damage. So yeah, this is pretty good. There are some other cool little things that you can add to her. I don't want to spoil too much on the augments, really. So whilst this is going to be sort of like a day 1 video, I don't want to go into too much details. There are some cool little things that you can do with either the grappling hook arms to give her mobility, because she doesn't really care about the reductions that you see in weapon skill. There's some movement things that you can do where you can give her like a definite above style jump where she doesn't do damage, but you do risk knocking yourself prone with that. So that is something that could even be an option for her there. There are also little things like you can leave oil trails as she zips around the map, that causes enemies to go prone when they're trying to chase her down. And there's some things where you can cause attacks to ricochet, but it does prevent burst fire, so you probably won't really use those on Argenta. Some of the really hilarious ones that I really like are the focal emitters, which is any single attacks that you do against target within 3 cells that you'll make an eye laser shot. So this is one that you could put on her, or even ones where you create clones of yourself that will cause enemy to prioritize them. So there are some fun little things that you can do it, but I do think that a lot of these are actually heavily designed for operative and melee builds and not so much for range builds. Though the weapon optimizer one, which I currently can't put on her because I haven't upgraded the throne on this current run, so if I quickly borrow that off of my rogue trader, then I can quickly show you what that does. So what the weapon optimizer could do is attacks with melter and plasma weapons get additional armor pen, attacks with bolter solid projectiles get additional overpen, and attacks with lads and flame weapons get additional dodge reduction. The dodge reduction is very good. Overpen, you do that anyway, but it makes bolters even better at clearing. There is actually an Arch-Militant upgraded version, which is yeah, so attacks with melter and plasma get versatility stacks armor penetration, attacks with bolter and solid weapons get overpen chance based on versatility, and lads and flamers get versatility stack reduction. So this is one of those ones that can also be very, very strong for her, and you just need to get the upgrades right in Act 4. I highly suggest putting off, besides obviously the Hand of the Righteousness, not actually putting augments on Argenta until Act 4, until you get more of them and you can start deciding what you want to go with her. But yes, no, there's definitely this Hand of the Righteousness is definitely a meta pick for her, so that's why I wanted to quickly cover that off to start with. And you can also do an AoE to inflict a stack of it, but it's not one that you need to really worry about. But because Argenta uses auto hit on both burst and single attacks thanks to the blessed bolter casing, she doesn't need to worry if her hit chance goes down by 10% because she auto hits. So yeah, no, it's free real estate, baby. Exemplar is going to see where I have made most of my changes. As I have said in previous videos, degraded defense got 90% nerf, whereas before it could go up to 1,000 stacks, it can now only go up to 100 a stack. So 100 divided by 6 is how much additional percentage damage that you get from degraded defense. So it's not as powerful as it was back when you used to get 1,000 stacks of base damage going in. So with the additional nerfs to Listening of Hatred, yes, you won't be doing 200k burst fires in Act 4 like you were previously, but you're still going to one-shot even all of their new bosses in Act 4. The Chronomancer did not stand a chance against me. For rank 1, we take Rack and Ruin, so after the soldier does damage, you can do more damage to new targets. So if you take out a pack, then you can, on your second attack, Rack and Ruin, and enough bullets for everyone will apply. This is why I like to start with the Flamer. I use the Flamer to clear some trash mobs, and then I use a 1 AP Wildfire to rapid fire to add Rack and Ruin, enough bullets for everyone to my second attack that's obviously got Listening of Hatred and Tense Retribution to annihilate the boss. It's why I order things, and I'll talk a little bit more about the rotation at the end of the video. Distract is going to be one of those talents that your burst stacks will lower enemies dodge, which will also prime some of your damage talents. Gets more bliss skill for Act 3. I also take No Heresy, so we get additional critical chance and armor against Xenos. Yeah, all of Act 4 and 5 is going to be that, and pretty much all of Act 3 as well. Entrench is going to be useful if you use Metabolic Overcharge, because if you ever get stuck with additional AP and MP you can't use, you use Entrench, so when she gets her next turn for run and gun, that you haven't wasted it. Deadly Aim is also going to be really useful, though you can, instead of taking Deadly Aim here, you could choose to take Vital Points. Now, depending on the one that you want to take, I think it's better to get Deadly Aim first, but you might want to take Vital Points first. Preferred Targets is also going to be one that when enemies have had their dodge reduced, you get additional critical hit chance, so that will apply to your burst fire that's going in there. And if an ally has reduced their parry chance, then obviously you'll get extra crit damage. So Bliss skill, then I take Demolition Engineer. I said you could have taken Swift Slaughter earlier. If you've taken Demolition Engineer earlier, this is where you want to take Swift Slaughter, but I just feel like Swift Slaughter has more value. The Soldier's Demolition, instead of Intelligence, is used to determine additional damage dealt with ranged area attacks. Deals 5% more damage for each 10 points in Demolition. So yeah, you will do quite a bit, especially as my Argenta obviously has, yeah, she's going to be getting a 32% buff there, I believe. Then I take Kick. Kick got nerfed. Kick got nerfed. It now costs 1 AP for characters that aren't named Ulfa. These changes to degrade defense and to Kick actually buff Ulfar indirectly because it makes everyone else weaker. Argenta has seen quite a few indirect nerfs and some direct nerfs, and overall, while she's still OP, it actually just makes Ulfar stronger by comparison, so they're a lot more closer in line than they were previously to the DLC. Get Agility. Ingenious is one that, whilst martial art would be good to knock things prone, she doesn't build strength, so this is a way that we can use our agility to make our resistance tests better, and that will apply to any resistance test, so stuff like on Udex, for example. Grenadier, so we can throw out Iron Eye grenades, so you don't need to rely on operative, so you can just half enemies' armor to then one-turn them. I take awareness and vital points. Vital points gives us a chance that we can double any of our critical damage modifiers. So yeah, no, this is very good, and you get a lot of chances to roll it per bullet when you're doing burst fires. Rank 11, I take muzzle velocity because around this point is where you'll be getting that plus 20, but only applies to the first bullet to increase its damage based on your rate of fire. So it's not as important early game, and it's why I take it later now and take point blank earlier. Take awareness, enough bullets for everyone. Same, the second attack on the turn will do 1% more damage. So this is going to be based on agility bonus. This only applies to your second attack around. It doesn't apply to every second attack, so keep that in mind. Exploit weakness is going to be another good one. When targets that have had their armor reduced, you do 10% more damage, so that's why we take breaking point earlier. We get some agility, and the last 5 points are going to go into perception, though you don't really need it for dodge reduction. It's just for your abilities here. I get eager for battle because the additional 2 AP is going to be useful for that turn 1 clears, as well as for finest hour. Integrity is going to be something, again, that increases your ballistic skill, so increases your rate of fire. Contempt for the weak is another good one, so you do more critical damage against targets that are stun prone or blinded. You'll normally need allies to set that one up. That's why this one comes in a little bit later. We take more medicate. We get dismantle as well, so our area attacks reduce the deflection of all enemies and their armor as well, so that this is something that is also pretty good. And then lastly, a motive force overload. After galvanizing an augment, the user gains 2 AP and 3 MP. Obviously the Act 2 item we can galvanize. I don't take this early because I tend not to use the galvanize, but towards the end you're just looking to stack AP to one turn everything. Rank 18, we take controlled shots so we don't accidentally burst fire allies. More perception, and then because we're making so many attacks, extermination comes in last. It is +1 per attack. It is pretty good, not as high value as everything else I've taken to this point. And lastly, finishing with Accustomed to Glory, that when we use our heroic we'll also get that little +1. Yeah, it's usable. It's very usable. As I've said before, because DLC is going to be bringing in so many new players who don't want spoilers, I can't really show combat encounters. If you want to see a combat encounter, do check my soldier guide where I specifically showed how to play Argenta, but mostly your turns will work like this. Once you have the additional always ready, you'll start with Reckless Rush because that means that your movement won't be ended. Then you will make a 1 AP area attack, which may or may not use Concentrated Fire, which increases it to 2 AP, meaning you've used 3 AP to this point. If you don't use Concentrated Fire, that's actually better because you can save that for rapid fire. When you have 5 AP, you can use Concentrated Fire. That's the point you bring this back into the rotation, unless you're just looking to kill something. Then afterwards, for 1 AP, when you have Flash Fire, you can use Wildfire, which will then use to do a free burst fire with rapid fire, and that will be your 5 AP rotation. This will obviously change when you have something like Finest Hour. You'll be able to have access to Devastating Attack and Kick that you can work in to help build up your versatility, and Revelant Slaughter will obviously cost 1 AP to use, and you will use it as you see fit. So sometimes you won't concentrate fire because you will kill enemies anyway, and that's when you're going to want to save that AP for either Revelant Slaughter or Devastating Attack. It will be very helpful to use this to remove the winded feature for Run and Gun. Run and Gun is a way that you can also get an additional attack, but whilst it reduces the cost of 1, it also gives you a -10 to ballistic skill, so you can kind of balance them out. But because of a soldier having access to Run and Gun, you'll have a lot more attack economy. Any turn where you know that you're going to do a lot of damage, that's going to be when you want to click Furious Recital to really buff your Litany of Hatred and to buff your Tense of Retribution. And Firearm Mastery is going to be the heroic that's going to be the go-to, and you're going to want to have your rate of fire weapon out so you can take a lot of single attack actions. And because of Blessed Bolt Casing, you will guarantee those hits. With Eogun joining the party, he has some insane buffs to single fire attacks, but I'll leave for that for you to explore, and I'll cover that more in the Eogun video. But that's going to be the update to Argenta. I hope you're all enjoying the DLC. This is probably going to be scheduled for like day 3, so do let me know how your runs are going below, and I'll be looking forward to seeing all those comments when I'm back from the music festival this weekend. Bye for now.